I never used to be the kind of person who got spooked easily. I grew up in a noisy, crowded suburb just outside Atlanta. There were honking cars, nosy neighbors, and barking dogs. There was always someone around. Privacy didn't really exist. And for the most part, I didn't mind. But after I moved to Nashville for grad school, life slowed down. I found myself wanting quiet weekends. I wanted something more peaceful. That's what made me want to take the trip. It was late July. It was the kind of hot southern weekend where the air feels thick like soup. Your shirt sticks to your back before you even get to the car. My friend Amelia had just turned 26. We thought it was the perfect reason to get out of the city. Just us, 5 girls, me, Amelia, Lauren, Jess, and Kat. We all met in college. We went different places after that, but we stayed close friends. Kat said we should rent an Airbnb somewhere quiet. She wanted something in the mountains. She found this place outside a small town called Ellings Creek in northern Georgia. The listing said cozy cabin with pretty views, perfect for group trips. There were a few pictures of a 2-story wooden cabin. It had a long porch that went all around it. There were pine trees so tall they seemed to touch the sky. It had lots of 5-star reviews. There were only a few strange ones that said the owner checked on guests a lot. We laughed it off. Southern people are friendly, right? We booked it for Friday through Sunday. The drive from Nashville took a little over 4 hours. Amelia's Jeep was packed with coolers, snacks, blankets, and enough wine to make a small village happy. By the time we got to the gravel road that led to the cabin, it was getting dark. GPS says another half mile, but this doesn't look right, Lauren said, looking worried. I think it's one of those roads that looks like it goes nowhere, but actually does. Kat said from the back seat. The road got narrow and curved through trees, so thick they made long shadows across the gravel. My stomach felt tight, but I didn't say anything. Finally, the trees opened up and we could see the cabin. It looked just like the photos, maybe even nicer. It had a wide front porch, a porch swing, and that kind of warm wood color that made it feel old-fashioned but comfortable. A man stepped out from a smaller building about 50 feet behind the main house. He waved as we drove up. That must be the owner, Jess said quietly. He looked like he was in his early 50s. He was tall, with a neat beard and gray and black hair. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans. When he smiled, his eyes got wrinkly. "Evening, ladies," he called out. "Welcome to the Blue Pine Cabin. I'm Franklin. I take care of this place. You girls find it okay?" We all got out and stretched our legs. Amelia shook his hand. "Yeah, no trouble at all. Thanks again for letting us stay." "Oh, it's no trouble," Franklin said. "I live in the guest cabin behind you. I won't bother you at all. But if you need anything, firewood, more towels, ideas for things to do, just ask." He looked at each of us. His eyes stayed on us just a little too long. I didn't like that the inside of the cabin was beautiful. It had wooden beams you could see, a big stone fireplace, and a kitchen with copper things. Upstairs, there were 3 cozy bedrooms. There were little things that made it feel like a real home. Soft blankets on the couches, candles that smelled like lemons, and even a record player with a pile of old records. We drank wine, cooked pasta, and played card games at the dining table. It felt like the kind of night that makes you forget about everything else: work, rent, things you have to do. Around midnight, we all went to bed. I took the room closest to the stairs. Before I went to sleep, I stepped out onto the porch to get some fresh air. That's when I saw Franklin. He was walking from his cabin toward the woods with a flashlight. He was moving slowly, looking around the trees. I hid behind the doorway and watched. Maybe he was just checking on something. Maybe it was nothing. We spent the morning making breakfast and hiking a short trail nearby. Franklin wasn't around. We thought maybe he was running errands or working on something in his cabin. It wasn't until that evening, after dinner, just as we were halfway through a drinking game, that someone knocked on the front door. Jess jumped. Who the heck? I looked. Through the peephole, Franklin stood there, holding a small basket. Hey, I said, opening the door halfway. He smiled. Just wanted to check in. I thought you girls might like some snacks. Local jerky, trail mix, homemade cookies. Oh, I said. Thanks, but we're good. You sure? His smile didn't change. We just ate, but it's really nice of you. I tried to be polite. He nodded and held the basket up like he was offering it again. Then he slowly walked back toward his cabin. I shut the door and locked it. That was weird, right? I asked everyone. Very weird, Lauren said. Why would he bring snacks at 10 p.m.? We tried to forget about it. We pretended it wasn't strange. Kat put on music and we danced around like silly kids. It helped for a little. While then Jess stopped laughing suddenly. Wait, did someone just walk by the porch window? All of us went quiet. What? Amelia whispered. I swear I saw a shadow. I grabbed a flashlight and opened the front door. The porch was empty. No sounds except the bugs buzzing in the trees. Nothing, I said, but my heart was beating fast. Less than an hour later, we heard footsteps. They were slow and careful, moving across the porch boards. We turned off the lights. From the darkness, I saw a person standing just past the window. Part of him was hidden by a wooden beam. It was Franklin. He was watching. He was out there again, I whispered. This time, he didn't bring snacks. He knocked once, then again harder. Opened the door just a crack. What's going on? I heard something, he said. It sounded like screaming. We didn't scream, you were sure? His voice sounded different now, flat. We're fine, I said, pushing the door closed. I locked it. Good night, Franklin. He didn't walk away right away. I watched his shadow stay there through the crack in the curtains. We didn't sleep well. Every creak, every wind sound made us nervous. I woke up early and went to the living room. Sunlight came through the windows. I sat on the couch, rubbing my eyes. That's when I saw it. A soft shine of metal from the bookshelf. I leaned closer. It was a tiny black lens, a camera. I called the others. We searched the whole cabin. We found another one in the bedroom, hidden as a fake hook. One in the kitchen clock. One, God help us, in the bathroom vent. We all stood there, shaking. He's been watching us, Kat whispered. Since we got here, Jess added. We packed in silence. We were scared, but we tried not to show it. We left everything clean, but we didn't care about checkout rules. We didn't talk to him about it. We didn't want to. We left the keys on the counter, put our bags in the Jeep, and started the engine. As we backed out, I saw him on his porch, watching us. He didn't wave, he didn't smile, he just stared. As soon as we had cell phone service, I told Airbnb everything. I took screenshots and pictures of the cameras. I wrote down the exact times everything happened. I left a detailed review using a fake account. We never heard back from them, but a few weeks later, the listing was gone. Sometimes I wonder how many other people he watched, or if he ever left those cameras running even when no one was staying there. I always liked living at the edge of small towns, the kind where you're still part of the community, but far enough away that you can forget about nosy neighbors or constant traffic. That's what made my husband, Noah, and me want to move to Maple Hollow, North Carolina, after years in noisy apartments. We wanted space and privacy, something quiet. We found this nice little house at the edge of some woods. It was one of those half-acre properties with a porch that went all around and a garden already planted. It was perfect. We bought it 3 summers ago, and it honestly felt like a new beginning. But no one told us about the Airbnb next door. The house sat empty for months after we moved in. Then, almost a year ago, a man from another state bought it and turned it into a short-term rental. At first, we didn't mind. The guests were mostly families or couples traveling. They were quiet and respectful. Some waved, some didn't. A few even brought us leftover baked goods or said hi over the fence. Then came that one weekend in late September. It had been a warm day, one of those rare perfect hours just before fall really starts. Noah and I had just finished dinner and sat down in the living room. We had a documentary ready to watch on TV. I remember the windows were open because the house smelled like cinnamon from the candle burning on the coffee table. Outside, the air had a sweet, earthy smell. Around 8:45 p.m., I looked out the living room window and stopped. In the backyard of the Airbnb, 2 people, young, maybe mid-20s, were setting something up on the grass. At first, I thought they were just having a picnic or lighting candles to keep bugs away. But then I saw what they were really doing. There were candles, yes, but they were arranged in a strange pattern on the grass, like a circle or a star. I couldn't tell exactly from where we were sitting. The woman was tall, with dark hair. She was laying down what looked like feathers or small bones. The man had messy blonde hair, jeans, and no shirt. He was drawing something on the grass with what looked like chalk or maybe flour. "Babe," I said, poking Noah's arm. "Look at this." He leaned over and squinted. "What the heck are they doing?" "Some kind of ritual, I guess," I said. "Weird hobby, but whatever, right?" Noah laughed nervously. "As long as they don't set anything on fire." We watched for a few more minutes, partly because it was interesting, partly because it made the hair on my arms stand up. Finally, they just sat cross-legged inside their candle circle, facing each other. It was creepy, but not exactly scary, so we let it go. We turned the TV up and got lost in the show. By the time we went to bed around 11:30, I looked out the bedroom window one more time. The Airbnb's backyard was dimly lit now, just faint candlelight still flickering. The couple was still there, just sitting, still at it. Noah asked sleepily, "Yep, I guess we've got some spiritual people next door." "Better than drunk people," he said, rolling over. I agreed and got into bed. I woke up to whispering. It was low, over and over, like a rhythm. It wasn't a dream. I was still half asleep, but awake. The kind of waking where your heart is already beating too fast, like your brain is trying to warn you before you understand why. I sat up. The whispering was coming from outside through the open bedroom window. "Noah," I whispered, shaking him. "Listen." He groaned but sat up, rubbing his eyes. Then we both froze. Someone was whispering, no, chanting outside. Not in the Airbnb's yard. Closer, our yard. I went to the window. The moon was bright, making long shadows across our lawn. That's when I saw them. The same couple from next door, standing in our backyard inside another ring of flickering candles. This one wasn't a circle though. It was a triangle with some kind of symbol carved into the grass in the middle. They were moving slowly, together, like a dance. Their hands were going up and down with their words. "Noah," I breathed. There, in our yard. He was already out of bed, grabbing his phone. I don't know why, but we didn't go outside. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was instinct. Something told us not to bother them. Instead, we went to the back door and made sure it was locked. Then we checked the others. Every door, every window. We double-checked and locked them tight. From the kitchen window, we could still see them. They were lit only by the orange candle glow. Their faces were blank, focused, not angry, just distant. Like they couldn't hear us even if we yelled dot, and then I noticed something even stranger. Further back in the woods, beyond our property, there were more lights. Tiny dots of firelight, like torches or more candles, set deep in the trees. They went into the woods, Noah whispered. My hands were sweaty. Why are they doing this here? He didn't answer. We stayed up until the chanting stopped, until the lights went away, until the backyard was dark and empty again. The next morning, their car was gone. The Airbnb driveway was empty. The backyard over there was spotless, like nothing had happened. We stepped outside carefully into our yard. Everything looked fine. No damage, no proof. Except for one thing. A note held down by a small stone in the middle of the lawn. I stared at it for a long time before finally kneeling down. My fingers shook as I opened the paper. It said, "Thank you for helping. You have been seen. You have been blessed." That was it. No name, no explanation. We didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe us? There was no proof, no cameras, no photos. Just two weird guests and a strange ritual that came onto our property. But it didn't end there. Over the next few nights, we started hearing things. Soft knocks on the back fence at exactly 3 a.m., strange humming through the open-air vents, scratches inside the walls. At first, we thought it was our imagination. We kept telling ourselves that over and over. But then we found something else. One morning, about a week later, I stepped outside to get the mail and froze. There on our doormat was another note. This one was typed. "We appreciate your silence." That was it. Noah wanted to call the police, but what would we report? Trespassing with candles. Strange notes. We did reach out to the Airbnb owner though. We sent a polite message saying that the last guests had come into our yard during the night and made us uncomfortable. He replied within hours, "I'm really sorry. I have no record of a reservation from the 23rd to the 25th. Are you sure they were staying at my place?" That's when my stomach dropped. We were sure. We saw them park there. We watched them set up. They went in and out of the Airbnb house. But apparently, no one had booked it that weekend. We stopped sleeping with the windows open after that. We bought motion lights and cameras. But whatever they did out there, whatever they invited, I still feel it sometimes. A heaviness in the air when the sun goes down, a change in the stillness, like something is watching. Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. on the dot. No sound, no movement. Just that feeling like the ritual never really ended. Like we're still inside the circle, and we were never supposed to see it. I had never used Airbnb before. Hotels were always the safer, simpler choice. You knew what to expect. Front desk, cleaning staff, cameras in the hallways. locked lobby doors at night. But this time, we were going for something a little more real. It was the beginning of April, just starting to warm up after a bitter Michigan winter. My friends and I, Rachel, Elise, Marcus, and DeAndre, were heading up to Traverse Bay for a long weekend. Nothing too fancy, just a break from work stress and everything else. We'd originally planned to book a lakefront cabin through a local rental site, but last-minute cancellations and high prices made our choices smaller. That's when Marcus found the AI Airbnb. It was a 2-story home just outside of town, tucked into a woodsy area with no close neighbors. It had 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a cozy kitchen, and a finished basement with a game room. The photos looked clean, the price was cheap, and most importantly, no shared space with the host. Or so we thought. We arrived on a Thursday afternoon. The sky was grey, but the air had that early spring smell, wet bark and melting soil. The house was nice. Not just Airbnb nice, but really cozy. There was a stone fireplace in the living room, a small patio out back, and lots of homey touches. Soft pillows, a bowl of wrapped candy on the counter, even a coat rack by the door. The key was in a lockbox, just like the host Greg said in the message. We'd never talked to him directly, only sent a few texts. His tone was polite, maybe a bit short. "Full access to the house," he wrote. "No need to talk, just enjoy the space." That was fine with us. We were looking forward to turning off our brains for a few days. It wasn't until later that evening that things started to feel weird. Elise was the first one to mention it. "Is it weird that there's like stuff still here?" she said, pulling a drawer in the kitchen open. Inside were checkbooks, some bills, a small bag with change, like personal stuff. I shrugged. "Maybe he lives here when it's not rented." Rachel called. Out from the living room, "There's a PlayStation 5 hooked up to the TV in here." I thought people took their electronics with them. We started noticing more details. Shoes in the hall closet, a car key on the counter, bottled medications in the bathroom drawer labeled with the name Greg Holloway. "You don't think he's like still living here, right?" Marcus joked, but his laugh sounded nervous. "It says we have the whole place," DeAndre said. "Maybe he just doesn't care. Trusts people," I said. That didn't explain why the basement door had a padlock on it. We didn't think about it too much that night. We made pasta, played cards, watched a dumb horror movie, and picked rooms. I took the one at the top of the stairs, with a window looking out at the driveway. I had trouble sleeping. It wasn't just because it was a new place. It was the creaking. Old houses always make noise, sure, but this one settled like it was breathing. Floorboards popped, pipes knocked. At one point, I swore I heard the front door rattle, but when I checked, it was locked. I finally fell asleep sometime after 2:00 at 3:47 a.m. I woke up needing to pee. I lay there for a minute, staring at the dark ceiling, hoping the feeling would go away. But my bladder wouldn't let me ignore it. I swung my legs over the bed and shuffled toward the hallway. That's when I heard it. Soft steps on carpet. A rustle. I stopped, hand on my doorknob. Maybe one of the others was up. Rachel had a small bladder. Elise got sleepless sometimes. I opened the door quietly. The hallway was dim, lit only by the faint blue light from the nightlight near the stairs. And at the far end of the hall, near Elise's door, was a person. Male, stocky, wearing what looked like a hoodie. I froze. He didn't see me at first. He was crouched slightly, hand on Elise's doorknob, like he was testing it. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe right. It was like my body locked up. Then his head turned, and we looked right at each other. He looked surprised, not scared, not angry, just caught. I reacted without thinking. I slapped the light switch beside me. The hallway lights blinked on in a cold, sudden glow. "Hey," I screamed. "What the heck? Whoa." Doors slammed open behind me. Rachel, Marcus, DeAndre, all yelling over each other. Elisa's door swung open too, and she screamed when she saw the man standing feet from her. "Wait, wait," the man shouted, backing away. "I'm Greg. I'm the host. What are you doing in the house?" Marcus shouted, lunging forward. Greg threw up his hands. I left some tools downstairs. I needed them for work tomorrow. I thought I could just grab them at 4 o'clock in the morning. DeAndre barked. Greg looked panicked now, sweating. He had no shoes on. We pushed him downstairs, still yelling over one another. That's when Rachel noticed the padlock on the basement door was open. "You were down there?" she asked. I just sleep there when I'm not renting the upstairs." "It's my house," he said quickly, voice shaking. "I wasn't going to bother anyone. I thought you'd be asleep." I remember feeling this deep cold feeling in my chest, like my ribs were hollow. He had been in the house the whole time. We made him sit on the couch while Marcus called Airbnb support and Rachel called the local police. Greg didn't try to run. Finally, an officer came out. We told him everything. The cop listened, took statements, and pulled Greg aside for a quiet conversation in the kitchen. Legally, it was complicated. Greg did own the house, but his listing clearly said the guests would have the whole place during their stay. Nowhere did it say he'd be living in the basement. The officer strongly told Greg to leave for the rest of our stay. He did, taking only a duffel bag. We didn't sleep much after that. The next day, we packed up early and left. Elise cried in the car. I filed a report with Airbnb. So did the others. His listing was taken down a few days later. I don't know if he got in real legal trouble, but he was banned from the platform. Later joked about it, basement, Goblin Greg, or Airbnb with benefits. But none of us really laughed. Not in a real way. I haven't used Airbnb since, because no matter how clean the place looks, how cheap the price is, or how friendly the host sounds over text, you never know who's already inside. I needed to get out of the city for a while. It had been a stressful few months at work. Deadlines, piling up, constant calls, never-ending noise. And honestly, I was burning out. My partner Erin could tell. She found this little cabin listed on Airbnb tucked into the hills near Huron Ridge, a tiny town about 4 hours from where we lived in St. Louis. It looked perfect. No neighbors too close, no city lights, just tall trees, winding dirt roads, and stars, endless stars. The listing had old-fashioned charm, a small fire pit out back, a wooden deck, and a yard that backed up to a slope thick with pine trees. The host, Julia, had great reviews. The kind where people said things like exactly what we needed and felt like home. Erin booked it for the weekend without even asking me. She just sent me the confirmation like a rescue rope. We packed light, a few changes of clothes, snacks, a couple bottles of wine, and Erin's telescope. She was always into stargazing. I liked watching her more than the sky, if I'm being honest. We arrived late Friday afternoon. The air smelled like damp leaves and earth. The driveway crunched under our tires as we drove up the gravel path to the house. A key was waiting for us in a lockbox, just like the listing said. No check-in, no meet and greet. I liked that. The place was nicer than I expected. Clean, cozy, simple. A big window in the living room faced the yard and the slope of the forest beyond. We unpacked quickly, lit a couple candles, and opened the wine. "This is exactly what you needed," Aaron said, brushing her hand along my back. I nodded. "Yeah, it's quiet. Like actually quiet." Around 9 p.m., we took the wine and a couple of blankets and headed out to the back deck. The sky was clear, darker than anything you'd see back home. The Milky Way stretched across the sky like a smear of powdered sugar. We talked for hours. About work, about maybe moving somewhere less noisy, about nothing. I hadn't felt that calm in months. At some point, I noticed a flicker of light through the trees to our right. A neighboring house, maybe 50 or 60 feet away, slightly downhill. We hadn't seen it when we arrived. There were no fences, just thick brush between the yards. "Look," I whispered, nudging Aaron. A porch light blinked on at the house next door. A man stepped out, just a shadow at first. He walked to the edge of his yard and stood still. I thought maybe he was letting a dog out or something, but there was no leash, no barking, nothing. Just him standing there with his phone in his hand. Then I saw it. His phone screen lit up, and he lifted it not to his face, but pointed toward us. "Is he recording?" Aaron asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't be sure, but the angle was right. His phone was steady, held high like someone filming, and he wasn't moving. I shifted the blanket off my lap and stood slowly, keeping my eyes on him. "Let's head inside," I said, trying to stay calm. Aaron didn't argue. We grabbed our things, walked in through the sliding glass door, and shut it behind us. From the living room, I looked out again. He was still there, still filming or watching. Hard to tell. No flashlight, just the glow of his screen. Aaron tried to brush it off. Maybe he's just checking his reception or something. I shook my head. Then why stand that still facing us? She didn't have an answer. We shut the curtains and tried to ignore it. Made some popcorn, watched half a movie before heading to bed around midnight. I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. Not loud, just soft rustling, like leaves underfoot. Aaron was asleep beside me, her face half buried in the pillow. I slipped out of bed quietly and walked to the window. The curtain was thin, and the moonlight outside made everything glow slightly blue. There he was, closer this time. In our yard, I blinked twice, trying to process. He stood by the tree line, just beyond. The reach of the yard light we hadn't turned on. His hands were at his sides, not holding a phone now, just watching. I didn't want to wake Aaron yet. Maybe I was imagining it. I moved to the living room and turned on the lamp near the couch. Something small but noticeable. When I returned to the window, he was gone. Gone. I leaned closer to the glass, heart pounding. Then I saw movement, his door closing next door, like he had slipped back to his house as soon as the lights came on. I stayed up for another hour, sitting on the couch with the lamp still on, watching. But nothing else happened. The next morning, we debated what to do. "Let's just go about our day," Aaron said. "We're leaving tomorrow anyway." We went hiking around some nearby trails, got lunch in town, stopped by a little antique shop. For a while, I forgot about the night before. When we returned to the cabin, the sun was already going down. The sky was cloudy this time, no stars to see. I didn't even suggest going outside. Neither did Aaron. We watched a movie, ate leftovers, and curled up together in bed by 10:30. Then the footsteps came, soft, careful, not like someone jogging by or walking their dog, like someone sneaking. I sat up instantly. Erin stirred. "What is it?" she mumbled. I held a finger to my lips and tiptoed to the window. This time, he was right up against the side of the cabin. His shadow stretched across the deck, visible under the sliver of porch light we had left on. He walked toward the side window, the living room one. We hadn't drawn the curtain on fully. I didn't wait. I grabbed my phone and called 911. As I whispered to the person on the phone, I watched him cup his hands against the glass and leaned forward, looking in. "He's looking inside," I said. "I don't know him. He's a neighbor here, but he's been doing this 2 nights in a row." The person told me officers were coming, but the area was rural and it might take time. Just then, he turned his head toward the glow of our bedroom window. I ducked quickly, heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. A few minutes later, I peeked again. He was gone by the time the sheriff's deputy arrived. About 20 minutes later, he was back in his own house. We explained everything, showed them the direction he'd come from, even mentioned the phone he'd pointed toward us the night before. The deputy knocked on the neighbor's door, but no one answered. "We'll make a note of it," he said. "Let the property owner know and keep your curtains closed tonight, just in case." It wasn't comforting at all. We almost didn't sleep. The next morning, Erin called Julia, who owned the Airbnb. He told her everything that happened. She seemed shocked and sorry. "I've never had anyone complain about something like this before," she said. "I'm so sorry. That's really scary. I'll talk to the neighbor myself." We packed our things really fast and left. Early that morning, I don't know if that man ever bothered other guests who stayed there. I left a detailed private message to Julia through the Airbnb app. I also wrote a review that only talked about safety problems. I didn't give all the details, just enough to warn people, but not enough to get my review taken down. I still think about it sometimes. How he didn't look scared when we saw him, how he came closer on the second night, how he never said a word, he never smiled or waved, he just watched us. It made me realize how easy it is for someone to hurt us, even in the quietest places. Actually, especially in the quietest places. A weekend that was supposed to help us escape noise became a nightmare of scary silence. I didn't think anything was wrong with the place at first. Me and my wife had been needing a break for months. Work had made us both really tired. Our kids had been stuck inside and restless ever since school ended for summer. So when my cousin Marlon told me about a quiet little Airbnb he'd stayed at, with his wife in a small town, we decided to book it right away. The house was in a town called Whisper Pines. It was about a 3-hour drive from where we lived in Durham. It wasn't in the middle of nowhere, just far enough away that you felt like you had escaped the city noise. The Airbnb listing said family-friendly place to stay with big backyard and treehouse. The pictures showed a cute little house with a porch that went all the way around. There were pine trees everywhere. That treehouse caught our kids' attention right away. My wife Rachel wasn't sure about it at first. She doesn't like staying in houses owned by strangers. But the reviews were mostly really good, and it was only for a weekend. Our kids, Eli, who is 7, and Sophie, who is 6, were jumping up and down with excitement just looking at the photos. We packed up Friday morning and got there late in the afternoon. It was a bit cloudy when we arrived. There was a breeze shaking the pine needles. The owner had left a handwritten note on the kitchen counter. "Welcome, Evans family. My house is your house. Help yourself to board games in the closet. Enjoy the swing set. And don't forget to leave a review. The key had been in a lockbox, just like she promised. We walked through the house together, letting the kids explore. The inside had that feeling like people really lived there. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. The floors creaked when you walked on them. The walls were covered with wood panels. There was a slightly old couch that you sank into when you sat down. It smelled like lemon cleaner and something faint underneath. Maybe old mothballs. After we unpacked, we watched a movie together and made popcorn. Rachel and I opened a bottle of wine and sat up talking after the kids went to bed. We didn't go to sleep until close to midnight. That first day felt normal. Good, even. But something woke me up around 1:30 in the morning. It wasn't a loud bang or crash. It was whispering, soft and long, like two people talking quietly behind a wall. I sat up in bed, confused. Rachel was asleep with one arm over her face. I tried hard to listen. The sound went away like it had never been there. Probably just wind, I said to myself. The windows were closed. The house was shut tight. I told myself it was nothing and lay back down. I didn't sleep well for the rest of the night. The next morning, the kids were up before us. They were already outside. I found them by the treehouse. "Dad, it has a rope ladder," Eli shouted. "It's so cool." Sophie was swinging nearby with her stuffed llama in her lap. I noticed the wood looked grey and old, like it hadn't been painted or fixed in years. The swing chains made creaking sounds with every movement. The treehouse had peeling paint and one shutter hanging crooked. It looked a little dangerous, but nothing that would hurt them right away. I told them to be careful and watched them for a while before going inside to help Rachel make breakfast. She looked tired. "Did you sleep okay?" I asked. She waited before answering, "Yeah. I just had a weird dream, I think." "About what?" "I don't know. I thought I heard someone calling my name, but I must have been half asleep." I almost told her about the whispering, but decided not to. I didn't want to start the trip off on a scary note. That afternoon, we explored the town. Whisper Pines was small, 2 diners, a gas station, and a strip of local shops. It had that sleepy southern feeling. People waved from their porches. At a small coffee shop, we got hot chocolate for the kids and iced coffee for us. One of the workers, a woman maybe in her 50s, heard Rachel mention the Airbnb. "You're staying at the Pinnerview house?" she asked. Yeah, that's the one," Rachel said. The woman's smile went away. "That place is still listed." We looked at each other. "I stayed there once," the woman continued. "Years ago. It was different then. I kept hearing things at night. Thought I was losing my mind." She laughed awkwardly. "Anyway, you folks enjoy your weekend. It's probably nothing." The kids were pulling on our arms to leave. I made a mental note of what she said, but I still tried not to think too much about it. Probably just local gossip. That night after dinner, we pulled out an old board game from the hall closet and set it up in the living room. Rachel had lit a couple of candles because the lights overhead kept flickering. "It's like we're playing by candlelight," she joked. Sophie squealed with laughter as she beat us all at the game. Everything felt light and fun again. But then I noticed something. The front door, it was cracked open. "Did someone open the door?" I asked. Rachel frowned. "No, I locked it earlier." I double-checked. I went over and shut it. This time I made sure it clicked shut and turned the deadbolt. Still, my skin felt prickly. Maybe one of the kids had played with it. Maybe not. About 20 minutes later, the lights flickered again, this time more violently. Then the power went out completely. "Okay, that's not funny," Rachel said, standing up. "I didn't do anything," I said, grabbing my phone to use as a flashlight. I went to the kitchen to check the fuse box, but everything seemed normal. Within a minute or two, the power came back on. The kids were huddled near Rachel with wide eyes. "I want to go home," Sophie whispered. "You're okay, sweetheart." "It's just an old house," Rachel told her, though her voice wasn't totally steady. Around 9 p.m., Eli came running inside, crying. His face was white. "What happened?" I asked, kneeling down. "I saw someone," he cried, "in the treehouse. He was sitting in there, just looking at me." Rachel pulled him into a hug, whispering that everything was okay. I ran outside, heart pounding. The swing set was empty but still swaying. The treehouse looked the same, dark inside and quiet. I climbed up the ladder with a flashlight. Nothing, just cobwebs in the corners and an old beanbag in one corner. No signs of anyone. "He's just imagining things," I told Rachel once we were inside. "Maybe shadows. It's probably ... But even as I said it, my voice trailed off. That night, after we put the kids to bed, Rachel looked at me across the candlelit table. "I don't like it here." I nodded slowly. "I don't either." Around 2 a.m., I woke up again. This time it wasn't whispering. It was footsteps. Clear, slow steps in the hallway outside our bedroom. I held my breath. They stopped right at our bedroom door. I sat up, barely breathing. The door didn't open. I got up quietly and opened it. The hallway was empty. The whole house was still. But when I walked toward the living room, I saw it. The front door was wide open again. I stood frozen. The night air was coming into the house. I checked the porch and the yard. Nothing. I locked the door again, this time putting a chair against it. I didn't sleep again. The next morning, I told Rachel everything. She just stared at me, pale. "I saw someone too," she whispered, "in the hallway last night. Just a figure, but it was watching me." She paused, and I never opened the front door. We didn't talk about it in front of the kids. We told them we were going home early because of a change of plans. They didn't ask questions. When we loaded the car, Sophie looked back at the swing set and said, "She's still sitting there." I turned around slowly. The swing moved once, gently, but no one was there. We drove back home that afternoon. The closer we got to Durham, the lighter I felt. It was like a heavy weight was lifting from my chest. I don't know what's wrong with that house in Whisper Pines. I don't think it's just local gossip anymore. Maybe something bad happened there years ago. Maybe the house just remembers. I haven't left a review, and I don't think I ever will. Looking back, I should have just kept driving. I was on a road trip by myself through northern Arizona. I was driving from Tucson to Sedona for a week-long vacation I'd planned months ahead of time. I'd recently quit my job at a dentist's office after getting really burned out. I also had a breakup not long after that. Honestly, I just needed some space. The plan was to stop halfway for one night to rest, then continue on to my main Airbnb the next afternoon. That's how I ended up booking a small 2-bedroom house in a neighborhood outside Prescott. The listing showed a clean, simple house with good lighting, security cameras outside, and a keypad to get in. It had decent reviews too. Nothing amazing, but nothing scary either. The host, someone named Rick, answered my messages quickly, which made me feel better. I pulled up around 7:45 p.m., It was early spring, but the air was a little chilly. A few stars had already started to show in the sky. The street was quiet, except for a barking dog down the road and the distant sound of a TV through someone's open window. The place looked just like the photos. Tan stucco walls, a red tile roof, and a short walkway with gravel landscaping on both sides. I unlocked the front door with the code. Rick had texted me and stepped into a spotless living room. It smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something warm, maybe like a cinnamon air freshener. I dropped my bag by the door and walked through the house out of habit, checking each room. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen, and a cozy couch facing a wall-mounted TV. Nothing fancy, but clean and well kept. I FaceTimed my sister real quick to let her know I'd made it safely. "Girl, that looks like something out of HGTV," she said, smiling. "You going to watch trash TV and eat ice cream? You know me too well," I laughed. We hung up after a few minutes, and I ordered a pizza from a nearby place. It arrived by 8:30. I ate half of it on the couch while watching 90 Day Fiancé, then put the leftovers in the fridge. By 9:15, I was already getting sleepy. The plan was to go to bed early and leave by mid-morning. That's when the doorbell rang. It wasn't a nice ding-dong chime. It was one of those harsh mechanical buzzes, loud enough to make me jump. I sat up, slowly, confused. I wasn't expecting anyone. My Airbnb check-in didn't mention anything about housekeepers or the owner stopping by. Still, I figured it might be a mistake. A delivery person, maybe. I walked to the door, but didn't open it. "Hello," I called through the wood. There was a pause, then a man's voice, low and firm. "Yeah, hi. We're here for the Airbnb. Can you open up?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" I asked, still behind the door. "I'm staying here tonight." Another voice chimed in, softer, almost laughing. "Now we've got the reservation. You must be mixed up." Something felt off. My heart started beating fast. "No, I have the listing in my app," I said. "You need to call the host. Come on, just open the door. We'll sort it out inside." That triggered something in me, some alarm in my brain. I was 5 feet 3 inches and alone, and I was definitely not opening that door. "No," I snapped. "I'm calling the owner. Please step away." There was silence again. Then I heard footsteps, one pair walking off the porch, but the other, the second man, stayed. I looked through the peephole, but it only showed part of the porch. I could see one guy standing off to the left, facing away toward the driveway. He was looking at a car parked there, a dark SUV with its engine running. Something in my gut told me this wasn't about a reservation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. That's when I noticed movement in the shadows further down the driveway. Behind the fence line were more figures, 5 or 6 people, not moving, just standing and watching. All of them had something covering their faces, hoodies, bandanas. I couldn't see details. A lump formed in my throat. I backed away from the door, turned, and walked fast but quietly to the hallway. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand in the guest bedroom. I ducked into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency? A woman asked. I'm at an Airbnb in Prescott Valley. I gave the address in one breath. There are men outside saying they have a reservation, but there's more of them hiding in the driveway. They're wearing masks. I think they're trying to break in. Okay, ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Are you alone? Yes, I whispered. Stay in a locked room. Officers are on the way. Do not engage. Stay on the line. I sat on the cold tile floor, phone pressed to my ear, heart beating so hard I thought it might echo through the walls. Then I heard its movement outside the house, footsteps, gravel crunching, a car door slamming, then silence until it wasn't. The wooden groan of pressure, like weight being forced against the front door. Then crack, they were inside. I covered my mouth with my hand to stop the sob that wanted to escape. "Ma'am," the dispatcher said, "are you okay?" "They broke in," I whispered. "They're in the house." I heard them running footsteps, cabinet doors slamming open, someone calling out, "Check the back." Another voice, "Where is she?" I curled tighter. In the corner of the bathroom, hand still clamped over my mouth. My phone was on mute now. I didn't want to risk them hearing. Footsteps got closer. Hallway, bedroom, then a hand on the bathroom door, locked. "Nothing in here," a man muttered. Then louder, I sat motionless, breaths shallow, staring at the bottom of the door like it might split open. Then, after what felt like forever, sirens, real, distinct, and close. Doors slammed. People shouted, the pounding of feet rushing out the back. Then quiet again. The knock on the bathroom door, this time, was followed by a soft voice. "Miss, this is Officer Daniels with Prescott Valley PD. Are you okay?" I broke down then, fully. Tears I'd been holding in rushed out. They found me minutes later, still on the floor, shaking. What followed felt unreal. The officers confirmed the house had been torn apart. My overnight bag was gone. My keys were taken. They shattered my car window and went through the glove box, but left the vehicle behind. The Airbnb host showed up an hour later, confused and sorry. He said the place had been booked only by me, and no one else should have had the code. The cops believed the gang likely looked around the area and used Airbnb listings to find empty homes or places with solo renters they'd been dealing with. Similar incidents, they said. Groups using fake accounts or stolen information to trick homeowners or guests. "They don't always hurt people," one officer told me, "but it's getting riskier. You did the right thing, locking yourself in and staying quiet." I didn't sleep that night, or for several nights after. The next day, I drove straight to Sedona and checked into a hotel instead of the second Airbnb, a place with a front desk, surveillance, and security. I haven't used Airbnb since. Even now, months later, I still check behind every door in any place I stay. I still check locks and windows 3 times. And sometimes, when the wind hits just right, I swear I hear that doorbell again, sharp, cold, and wrong. Not all horror stories end in death. Sometimes they just leave you haunted, alive, but never the same. I never thought owning a second house would become the most stressful decision of my adult life. It started out as a smart way to make money. My wife Emily and I had bought the place just outside Asheville, North Carolina, about a 20-minute drive from where we lived. It was a charming 3-bedroom cabin tucked into the trees. It was just secluded enough to appeal to the kinds of people who wanted to get away from it all, but close enough to downtown to be listed as convenient. We both had full-time jobs. She was a teacher. I worked in IT from home. So the idea of turning the cabin into an Airbnb just seemed like a great way to make extra money. The market was hot. The place was cute. And we had enough money saved to furnish it with good taste. For the first 2 years, it worked. We barely spoke to our guests beyond a handful of messages. We hired a local cleaning lady, and the rental calendar was almost always full.
We were
Making double what a long-term renter would have paid. Sure, it was more hands-on, but it gave us options. We weren't tied to a year-long lease, and we could block off weekends for ourselves. But success started coming with problems. The kind you don't read about in Airbnb success blogs. The real change started on a Monday evening in early October. I had just logged off from work, still in my sweats, reheating leftovers. Emily was grading papers in the next room. We had a one-night booking at the cabin, something we usually avoided, because it meant rushing to clean and reset for the next guest. But it was midweek, and it had been a slow month. The reservation was under the name Brian Keller. He booked the place for one night only. He said he was passing through from Charleston and wanted a quiet evening before driving to Tennessee. His profile looked normal enough, 2 5-star reviews, verified ID. He messaged politely around noon, saying he'd arrive around 4:30 p.m. I sent him the usual automated welcome message with the smart lock code and the instructions for the fireplace. At 4:52 p.m., I got the standard text. "Brian, hey, just got here. Beautiful place. Thanks again." I replied with a thumbs up. No red flags, no gut feelings. Just another night. At 9:07 p.m., my phone buzzed again. "Brian, hey, can I call you real quick?" My stomach turned a little. Most people didn't call. If anything went wrong, they texted. Messages were easy to manage, easy to forward if needed. But before I could reply, my phone lit up with his number. I sighed, set down my drink, and answered, "Hello." "Hey, yeah, sorry to bother you," Brian said. His voice was calm, maybe a little too calm. "It's just the water. It's not working. I tried the kitchen tap and the bathroom faucet, but nothing's coming out." I blinked. None of the taps. Like no pressure at all. Yeah, like bone dry. That didn't make any sense. We'd never had plumbing issues before. I apologized and told him I'd come by to take a quick look. It would only take me 20 minutes. He agreed without hesitation. "No problem at all," he said. "Thanks for being on top of it." I threw on jeans and a hoodie, grabbed my flashlight and tool bag just in case. Emily looked up from the kitchen table. "You going out there now?" she asked. "Yeah, guest says. The water's not working." She frowned. "That's weird." "Yeah, I know. I'll be back soon." Driving to the cabin was usually peaceful. That night though, the road felt too quiet. Just me winding down dark mountain turns, headlights bouncing off pine trunks. The air was cold and wet smelling, early signs of frost. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the first thing I noticed was the 2 cars. One was a silver Ford sedan, the kind you'd get from a rental lot. The other was an older blue SUV, parked tight along the edge like it didn't belong there. I slowed down. Brian said he was alone. Airbnb's rules clearly said no extra guests without permission. I made a mental note to mention it in the follow-up review. Still, nothing looked off. The porch light was on. No visible damage. I walked up and knocked politely before entering the smart lock code. "No answer, Brian," I called. "It's me, Matt, the owner, just coming to check the plumbing." Still nothing. I stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of cedar and cleaning supplies. Normal. The lights were on in the living room. And then I heard footsteps upstairs. I raised my voice. "Hey, sorry to barge in. Just wanted to check out the water issue." Footsteps paused. Then someone started coming down the stairs. A man, probably late. 20s, turned the corner. Dark hair, clean shaven. He wore a long-sleeved black shirt and jeans. Calm expression. "You must be Matt," he said, smiling faintly. "Yeah, Brian, right." He nodded. "Thanks for coming so late. I know, it's a pain." "No problem," I said. "So you said the water's not working?" "Yeah," he said, glancing toward the kitchen. "It was weird. Just went off a little after we got settled." I noticed then there was a second mug on the coffee table. A scarf tossed over one of the chairs. "Someone else with you?" I asked casually. Brian gave a vague shrug. "My girlfriend stopped by for dinner. She just left." But the blue SUV was still parked outside. "Got it," I said slowly, walking into the kitchen. I turned the tap. Nothing. No sound. No pressure. Then I flicked the switch for the garbage disposal. Out of habit, it didn't hum. No power. I looked at him. "Did you check the breaker box?" He looked confused. "The what?" I didn't believe him. "Mind if I check it real quick?" I asked, already walking toward the utility closet near the back hallway. "Sure," he said, too quickly. I opened the closet. The panel looked fine, all switches in the right place. I flipped the main switch off and on. Still nothing. That's when I heard a sound from upstairs. Something like a thud. I turned. "You sure you're here alone?" Brian blinked. "Yeah, why?" I didn't answer. I just started walking up the stairs. He didn't stop me. The upstairs hallway was dimly lit. Only one room had a light on. I stepped closer and saw the door slightly ajar. Inside was the master bedroom, empty, but the closet door was closed. And I knew I'd left it open after the last cleaning. I took a step closer, heart pounding. Then I paused. From behind me, Brian called up. "Everything okay?" "Just checking something," I replied. My hand went to the closet knob. I opened it fast, empty. My heart finally slowed. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the second car belonged to the girlfriend, and she had left on foot or with someone else. Maybe the power outage was a fluke. But then I noticed something in the closet corner, a second set of shoes. Women's boots, still warm. I stepped out into the hallway and called down. "Hey, can you come here a sec?" Silence. "Brian," no reply. I rushed downstairs. The front door was wide open. His car was still in the driveway, but he was gone. So was the SUV. I called Emily immediately. "Lock the doors. Don't open for anyone. Call the police if anything weird happens." "What's wrong?" she asked, panicked. "I don't know yet," I said, climbing into my truck. "But I think someone just used our Airbnb for something they weren't supposed to." I reported the whole thing to Airbnb the next day. I gave them all the messages, the call log, even a screenshot of the guest's profile. Turns out the profile was fake. The ID had been stolen. The payment bounced 2 days later. The number he used was disconnected. We never found out who they were or what they were doing there. But a week later, the cleaning lady found a knife wedged deep into the mattress of the master bed, hidden on purpose. That was the last guest we ever hosted. We sold the cabin 6 months later, and I still checked the lock on our front door 3 times before bed, just in case. It started as a simple favor. I wasn't even supposed to be in town that weekend. My sister Kayla and her husband Mark had listed their second house on Airbnb a few months earlier. It was a modest 2-bedroom bungalow in a quiet neighborhood just outside Flagstaff, Arizona. The kind of place tourists liked. Cozy, clean, affordable, and just far enough from the city that it felt peaceful. They were in Hawaii on vacation, and I was back home in Phoenix. Around 9 p.m. on a Friday night, Kayla texted me asking if I could do her a quick favor. "Kayla, can you drive up to the house tomorrow? The current guests say there's no running water." Me, seriously? Isn't that a job for a plumber? "Kayla, we called someone, but they can't get there until Monday. I just need you to check if the valve was bumped or something dumb, please." I sighed. It wasn't ideal, a 3-hour drive just to check on some piping. But I owed her. She helped me through college and let me crash on her couch for nearly a year after my breakup. I agreed, packed an overnight bag just in case, and planned to leave early the next morning. Backstory: I'd stayed at the house once before, just after they bought it. Nothing weird about the place. Quiet neighborhood, friendly neighbors, fenced-in yard. The street was mostly retirees and the occasional out-of-towner. The water had never been a problem. Kayla was careful about keeping things maintained, and Mark installed all new plumbing 6 months earlier. But I couldn't shake a weird feeling during the drive. I kept imagining what kind of person would turn off a water valve on purpose, and why. I got to the house around 12:30 the next afternoon. It was hotter than expected, mid-90s, and not a cloud in the sky. As I pulled up the gravel driveway, I noticed something odd. No cars out front. There were supposed to be guests staying there, a couple, maybe in their 20s. Kayla said they booked 2 nights and were supposed to leave Sunday. But the driveway was empty, the curtains drawn, and the place looked almost abandoned. Still, I parked, grabbed the spare key from the lockbox, and knocked first, just in case. No answer. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. "Hello, anyone?" "Here," I called out. Silence. The living room was clean, not hotel room clean, but lived in. A few mugs in the sink, someone's duffel bag resting by the hallway door. But no people. "Okay," I muttered. "This is already weird." The first thing I did was head to the basement to check the water valve. The house had a finished basement with a utility closet in the back corner. As I went down the creaky steps, I noticed how quiet it was. No hum of appliances, no floorboards creaking above me. Just this heavy, muffled silence. I opened the utility door and spotted the valve on the far wall. It was twisted tightly shut. I turned it slowly, and the moment I did, I heard a distant whoosh, water rushing through the pipes. Weird. Why would someone shut it off like that? As I stood there staring at it, something bothered me. Why weren't the guests anywhere to be seen? Why leave the valve completely closed and then complain about no water? Then I remembered, Kayla said the guy who booked the place called her directly. He told her his name was Ryan. Young, polite, sounded normal. But anyone could say that. Anyone could use a fake name and stolen card. This was an Airbnb, after all. I took a deep breath and turned to head back upstairs. That's when the basement door creaked open, followed by footsteps. They were heavy, deliberate, not fast, but sure. I froze halfway up the steps, and then 3 men came into view, all in jeans and hoodies. Late 30s, maybe early 40s, bearded. One of them had tattoos creeping up his neck, the kind that weren't for decoration, the kind that said prison time. The lead guy smiled faintly. "Is it fixed?" he asked. I recognized the voice immediately. It was Ryan, the same guy who called my sister, except he wasn't young, and he sure as hell didn't look like a tourist. "Yeah," I said carefully. The valve was just shut off. Must have tightened on its own. They all just stared at me. No expression, no nods, no thanks. I cleared my throat. So I'll head out now. Let me know if you need anything else. As I tried to step past them, I noticed something terrifying. Tucked into the waistband of the guy closest to the stairs, a gun. I didn't wait. I forced a polite smile, walked past them, and climbed the rest of the stairs faster than I should have. They didn't follow me, but they watched me. I walked straight out the front door, got into my car, and drove 2 blocks before I even blinked. When I got home, Kayla was frantic. "You're back early. What happened?" I told her everything, from the silent house to the valve to the 3 men in the basement. She went pale and immediately said, "I'm calling the cops." She reported it as a suspected break-in or squatting situation. When the Flagstaff police arrived about 40 minutes later, they called her back. No one was home, the officer said. Doors were locked. No signs of forced entry. Place looks clean. Kayla gave them the code to the lockbox. Another hour later, she got another call. "Looks like the place was recently left," the officer said. But here's the kicker. The credit card used for the booking was flagged as stolen this morning. Over the next few days, Kayla and Mark checked the house. They found several items missing: a $1,200 sound system, a collection of antique vases, some electronics. Even the guest towels were gone. There was no young couple, no Ryan, no real booking. Whoever those men were, they'd used a stolen card to gain access, stayed just long enough to scope the place out, and may have been planning something worse. What haunts me the most is that they turned off the water on purpose to get me to come. They must have known the owners were out of town. Maybe they looked up Kayla's social media and knew she was in Hawaii. Maybe they wanted to scare me, rob me, or worse. But then why didn't they? Why let me walk away? That was the last time Kayla ever let someone stay there without meeting them first. A few months later, she pulled the house off Airbnb completely and rented it out long-term instead. Now, every time I pass a basement door, I hesitate. Every time I hear footsteps on stairs, my stomach turns. And every time someone tells me it's probably nothing, I remember the faces of those 3 men, and the way they just stood there, waiting.